I bought my first property in 2015 without knowing what the term house hacking meant, but while basically doing that strategy that I've learned over the years is what it's called. At the time I did the math and it just made sense. And that one decision ultimately changed how I view finances, housing, and ultimately led to my current career. So today I want to talk a little bit about my background in real estate and how that led to my career in mortgages. I'll talk in depth about the first property that I bought in 2015 and just a little bit about the other ones and how that all kind of connects to my current career in mortgages. So the story behind my first purchase is I was living with friends. I really enjoyed that living situation, and I was starting to be able to save up some money. And I was asked by a coworker at work, what was I saving up for? Like a car, threw out a couple examples, and I was like, no, I don't really care about buying a new car. And she's like, why don't you buy a house to fix up and sell in a couple years? Basically a longer term live-in flip was what she suggested. And while that particular idea didn't really resonate with me, I did think to myself, as a result of that conversation, what if I were to buy a house and have the exact same living situation, but have my friends that I was living with paying me instead of a landlord? And at the time, I was able to do that and charge a little less in rent than what we were all paying at the time, except it was to me rather than some nameless landlord that could change the rules or raise the rent whenever they wanted. So that was kind of the initial idea of it. Ultimately, I ended up buying a property with a FHA loan with 10% down. At the time, 2015, interest rates were really good. I got it at 3.875% interest rate and basically was able to achieve what I was looking to do. Now, a couple things, important takeaways now on this side as the mortgage professional. I liked the lender that I worked with on that, and I used him several times after that. But one thing that was not made clear to me was mortgage insurance. So with an FHA loan, if you're putting 10% down or more, so I actually kind of got lucky because I was not putting 10% down solely for this reason, you have mortgage insurance for 11 years. Versus if you put less than 10% down, you have it for the life of the loan. So that was one little thing that I found out later. I thought, like with a conventional loan, it would fall off after a certain amount of equity was built in the home. Another important part of this was that I got pre-approved. I reached out to a realtor that I knew from college. He got me in touch with this lender, got pre-approved. For a while, I was looking at houses. There were a lot of houses that were like maybes, okay, that's decent, but none that really stood out to me until the house that I ultimately bought came onto the market. It was great timing because it happened to be a house next door to a house that I had previously rented a few years ago. So the math was I was just going to charge my friends the same rent that I was being charged at the house next door. I knew the neighborhood well, and I thought it was a good place to live in addition to having the specs that I wanted, 4 bedrooms being the main one. Now, a big thing with this transaction is I basically spent all the money I had saved up for this purchase. I had a couple thousand left over after that. So what I did, and I like this in general, especially if you're buying a property that is a little bit older, which this one was, and I knew I'd have some big ticket repair items coming up, is I got a home warranty. I had that for the first year while I was able to save up a little more and have more of a cushion for things like roof replacement, HVAC, which did eventually come up, but I was prepared for that. So it was only years later when I got a little more focused on real estate investing that I learned the term house hacking, but at the time it was just an idea that made sense. And I will say it was something that everyone that I shared with, my realtor, my lender, family, they all seemed to think it was a good idea, but they had really nothing to add to it. And that was one of the things that always stuck with me when I started getting into mortgages It's like maybe I could actually have something to say in addition to, oh, that sounds like a good idea, like give some actual firsthand experience. So I'm just going to quickly go over the other investment properties I've bought since then. I'll probably go more in detail on each one in individual separate videos, but bought another property in 2018, which I just sold about 2 weeks ago now with a partner. Big thing with that is if you ever buy a property with a partner, make sure you're aligned in your plan for it. Bought another property a year after that as a fix and flip, and a lot of lessons for that. Probably the biggest one being the contractor can make or break that type of investment. Bought it, sold it a year later, and then in 2021, right after selling that property, I bought another investment property. And then finally, and this is not so much an investment as a primary residence, and that's the property that I live in now, which I bought with my wife in 2022. After I bought my 2021 property, that was when I made the move to get my mortgage license. The inspiration for that was a couple things. One, going through the mortgage process personally, I saw a lot of good examples, but also a lot of examples that I thought I could improve on. And also looking at different types of mortgages, from your conventional FHA versus hard money that I did with the flip, and also evaluating a DSCR loan. I had to go to different lenders for each one. So I felt like that should be something, yes, they're all a little different, but it's all kind of in the same wheelhouse. You should be able to cover all of those bases. So with that in mind, I started out in 2021 with a company called Cross Country Mortgage, which is a great company to start with. They provided a lot of support, and it was a hot time in the market where interest rates were very low. However, after a couple years, rates started to go up, and I came to realize Cross Country was not the most competitive on interest rates. And that was when I shifted to working for a mortgage broker, having access to multiple lenders to lend to, and really being able to advocate on the client's behalf rather than push one lender's products. Then end of 2024, beginning of 2025, I shifted to my current company, Massif Mortgage, also a mortgage broker, which I felt like is the model that fit for me, but also this current company allows me to lend out of state, allows me to do commercial lending, and just really a good support system, someone local that I've known for a while. So as a mortgage advisor, I try to put myself in my shoes in 2015 a lot, especially when working with first-time home buyers. And when I started on that path, I did not really look at it from a investment standpoint. I looked at it from the benefits of ownership. And for me, there was a couple things. Being able to provide a living space that my friends and myself enjoyed, where we could kind of be ourselves and didn't have to look over our shoulders. It was being in an area that I really liked and was familiar with, being able to go outside and grill whenever I wanted, which I was not able to do years ago living in an apartment. But over the years, that property has been an incredible investment. And one of the big concepts that I didn't really grasp at the time is you're buying an appreciating asset with leverage. So I didn't need to put 10% down back then. I could have done 3.5%. But even on that 10%, that was like $18,000, 20 something with closing costs. The appreciation of that property since then, which has been more than the normal average, but typically you're looking at like 3 to 4%. It's 3 to 4% of the home price. It's not that 20,000 that I put down. So the gains are much higher than if you're investing that $20,000 in the stock market, and the gains are based on that $20,000 solely. Now, a big takeaway I've had in real estate as well is seeing it's a long game. Ultimately, my job, I feel as a mortgage advisor, is to help you think as both an owner and also an investor. The financial part and also just the ownership aspect. What does it mean to you to have your own space, to be able to do what you want with it? Everyone is different. Everyone wants to buy at different times of their life. But ultimately, one of the big takeaways that I will always stress is get started. Start talking to a realtor or a lender sooner than you might think you need to, because there might be a great opportunity like that first property that pops up, and if you're not prepared to pull the trigger, you lose it. So the earlier you talk to someone, the better. Maybe it doesn't make sense right away, but at least you know kind of what the aiming point is. And a great thing about real estate is especially for the basic loans, FHA, conventional, VA, USDA, the guidelines aren't changing anytime soon, at least not for the worse. So if you know what the guidelines are, you have a very clear goal that you can shoot for to achieve. Hopefully that gives you a little more insight into where I'm coming from when I talk about mortgages. As always, if you have any questions or comments, shoot them below, or feel free to call, text, or email me. Like I said earlier, I'll be breaking down these specific deals besides the first one, the good, the bad, the ugly. So if you're interested in that, please like and subscribe to follow along. But thanks everyone for tuning into this video, and I will see you next time.